everybody, Ray Garner with Garner's Games, here today to talk to you about a brand new Yu-gi-Oh format. And I use the term brand new kind of loosely because this is a format I have been working on for quite a little while, probably close to 2 years now. But I've really gotten hardcore into it for the last 3 months. I've been trying to really look at accomplishing what I want to accomplish with this format, which is to bring a more anime duel style feel to the game, and also to have it where people are able to play archetypes that they like regardless of what era they're from, and to enjoy the game, hopefully without getting raffle stomped into the ground as soon as their opponents get their second turn. So with that said, the name of the format is the Ace format, which I have posted on my Facebook page, on my Discord, the printed out version of the rules. Now, the base concept of this is you build your deck around an ace monster. So I open up a couple of packs here real quick, and the first one to come up is this one right here. Legendary Lord, 6 Samurai Kazan. Now, if you decide to use this as your ace monster, now admittedly, this is just a random pack pull, so I'm not like saying this is what you need to do. You would have access to 6 samurai monsters. You would have access to warriors as far as your creatures go. Also anything that mentions an effect that directly affects a 6 samurai, a legendary 6 samurai, and so on. Or and you go to spells and traps, it would also be anything that does any of that, plus targets synchro monsters. Now, all that being said, that's just me jumping ahead of the cart. So the base concept is on the Ace format is it's a singleton casual format. Play experience, which basically means you cannot run more than one copy of any card, with some exceptions. And all the exceptions are ones that are forced by cards within Yu-Gi-Oh! And that, basically, if you have Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon as your ace monster, you may run 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons in your deck. And that basically is a little bit of a loophole. It'll make it'll make Blue Eyes White Dragon a pretty powerful deck. But it won't be the most powerful deck because it's still, something that requires, a lot of effort to get, your Blue Eyes White Dragon, especially when you don't have multiple of Maidens, multiple of Sage, even multiples of some of the other stuff. My cat here who's wanting my attention this morning. So, that's kind of a different deal. And of course, your ace monster doesn't have to be a extra deck monster. I was recently asked when I was telling someone about the format, well, what about branded? If you run any of the branded fusion monsters, there's not enough cards that target them to build a deck out of. And a lot of the cards won't work. But if you play branded, you know that the actual ace monster of the deck isn't any of the fusion monsters. There's a Fall Alabaz. Pronounce it correctly, I think. So that it would be your ace monster. And that would open up all the branded fusions. That would open up branded fusion. That would open up several of the spells, several other main creatures for your main deck. So that is the core of the Ace format. There are other ways to get multiple cards and stuff, but we don't want to go into exceptions too much. So I'm going to kind of go through this real quick. I don't want to read the rules to you. But as I just said, the Ace format is a singleton format. For more casual play experience, players may not have more than one copy in their deck, main or extra. What is an Ace monster? The Ace monster dictates your deck on how your deck must be built, what kind of cards are allowed, and which ones are not. Your Ace monster may be any type: normal, effect, ritual, synchro, exes, Pendulum, or Link. We're not excluding any summoning types out of this format. Once you're chosen your ace monster, you may start building your deck. Your monster cards all must either share the archetype, the creature type, without being from a different archetype, or have an effect that names the monsters. An example that I used was Soul Resonator may be used in a Red Dragon Archfiend deck as it lists Red Dragon Archfiend in its effect, even though it is not an Archfiend or a Dragon. It is actually from the Resonator archetype. So that is an overriding. Even if it's from another archetype, if it says I'm used with this ace monster, then it can be in the deck. Spells and traps, which I did write these separately just so there was a little more confusion, but I'm just going to read them all as one. They must share an effect that of the ace monster's archetype, creature type, or summoning type, or must list the ace monster by name. A card that does not list an archetype list an archetype that is not the ace monster's archetype cannot be used. So if you have something that affects Dragon Lords, even though it affects dragons, it cannot be used in a Blue Eyes White Dragon deck, for example. Same applies to your traps. Now we get into a little bit more of the exceptions. Oh, and there's not a whole lot of exceptional deal. Like if you run a fusion monster as your ace monster, you of course must have all the fusion materials listed on the card in the deck. But it does create a exception because not all fusion monsters have a Gem Fusion summon, a Red Eyes summon, branded fusion, and so on card. So if you have a fusion monster as your ace monster, you may run 3 copies of polymerization. Not substitute for polymerizations or fusion substitute or any of that stuff. Straight old polymerization. If you're running Gem Knights, you cannot run 3 copies of Gem Fusion. You have to run 1 Gem Fusion, and then you can run up to 3 polymerizations. Ritual monsters also hit a deal. If a ritual monster has a named ritual spell, the example I use is Black Luster Soldier is summoned with Black Luster Ritual. You may have 2 copies of that in your deck. However, if your ritual monster is summoned with an archetype ritual spell, the example I used was Cyber Angel Dakini. I think that's how you pronounce that. Summoned with Machine Ritual. And that one you may have up to 3 copies of that ritual spell. And I use that one specifically because there is another ritual spell that works the same with them, but you may only run 1 copy of one and 3 copies of the other. You may not run 3 copies of each. So you have to pick one that's going to be your main one if there are multiple spells that are listed on the ace monster. And it's only spells listed on the ace monster that can have multiple copies. Alright. Synchro monsters. You must have the requirements, which is going to be a tuner. But your tuner still must have the effects listed on it of being of your archetype, being of your creature type, or listing your ace monster by name. You can't just willy-nilly throw, you can't throw junk Synchron into a Red Dragon Archfiend deck. Xyz monsters. Now this one here, the example I used for it was Neo Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. Requires 3 level 8 monsters. It means the deck must have 3 level 8 monsters. Even if you have an alternate summoning route to get to that level 8, you must have the required monsters to do the hard version of the Xyz summon. Even if you have never had the intention to do it, you still have to have that in your deck. Pendulum monsters. Of course, pendulum monsters are kind of an oddity because you can have a pendulum monster that is going to be in your main deck, or you can take a pendulum monster that's also going to be an Xyz or a fusion or a synchro monster, or even a ritual monster. Now I think about it. So if you do Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, it can be tributed by 2 monsters. There's no special summoning those there. It's an effect monster, so you can use things that are relevant to it that affect pendulum summons. If you have an extra deck one, which I use, DDD Super Doom King Purple Armageddon. It is a fusion and a pendulum monster. It utilizes all the pendulum rules, and therefore it opens up spells that affect pendulum monsters. And it also is a fusion monster, so therefore it opens up all the rules for a fusion monster. And that Link monsters, same thing. You can have anything that is any spell that affects a Link monster type. And of course, if you're doing a Link monster as an X monster, it's automatically going to be an extra deck monster. Let's see what about deck construction rules. There are going to be cards that I utilized as an example that force you to have multiple copies. The example I use is Destiny Hero. I never have pronounced this one correctly. It's Malicious, Malicious, and it has an effect that states you can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon 1 Destiny Hero Malicious from your deck. So that means you must have 2 copies of that card in your deck if you're running it in your deck. And of course, your ace monster must be a Destiny Hero. Now you have something that says it can summon any number of copies of it. Then you have to have 3 copies of it. And then, so Nimble Momanga, I think that's pronounced. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to your graveyard, gain 1,000 life points. If you do, special summon any number of it from your deck face down defense position. So you have to run 3 copies of that because it sounds like Hero Kid would also do the same thing. Now, any card that has multiple effects in this format, you must be able to achieve every effect. So the example I used on this one was Crimson Call. Add a level 4 lower fiend monster from your graveyard to your hand. If you control a Red Dragon Archfiend, or if you control a Red Dragon Archfiend in your deck, I have messed that one up badly. Sorry. Crimson Card, add 1 level 4 or lower fiend monster from your graveyard to your hand. Or if you control Red Dragon Archfiend from your deck. So you must have a level 4 fiend monster in your deck or lower. If your assault mode or Red Dragon Archfiend attacked, banish this card and make a second attack. That means you must now have an assault mode monster in your deck. And that. So to run this card, your ace monster needs to be Red Dragon Archfiend. You must have a level 4 or lower fiend monster, and you must have an assault mode monster in your deck, which also means you must have activate assault mode 90% of the time. There's probably an exception there that I'm not thinking off the top of my head. So you must be able to achieve every effect. You can't just use it for, I shouldn't say you can't just use it for. You can just use it for getting a level 4 lower fiend monster from your graveyard to your hand or from your deck. But you must also have an assault mode monster in your deck. There are also cards that will unlock certain things. Sticking with the Red Dragon Archfiend deal, I went with Fiendish Golem. Fiendish Golem allows you to set one Fiendish chain directly from your deck or graveyard if you control Red Dragon Archfiend. So if you play this card, you now must also run Fiendish Chain, even though it is not technically an Archfiend card, although it's pretty close to one, or a Red Dragon Archfiend specific card. Because this card lets you go get it, you must put it in your deck. Cards of starting Forbidden List, we will be using the current Forbidden List on the card, that Konami puts out to affect the card pool. Now, doesn't mean eventually we won't develop our own one as the format slowly takes off. But I do think this is a good way to get people to play Yu-Gi-Oh! That have kind of drifted away from the game and aren't necessarily interested in the meta format. And not that the meta format's bad. There's a lot of people out there who love it, and there's a lot of people out there who do hate it. This is to kind of build a middle ground. Because I don't want to do a lot of the current formats that are alternative formats from the main format are like Genesis, or like Time Wizard, or GOAT, or Edison, or all these other formats that have been put out there, a lot of them officially by Konami, is basically, I liked Yu-Gi-Oh! Until we added synchros, added XCs, added pendulums, added links. It all fell apart when we did that. The game went the garbage when we did that. And I don't think that's actually true. And I don't think that excluding people from your format who like Sky Strikers or who enjoy Code Talker, or, they got into the anime and Arc V, so Performa Pals is their favorite deck. I don't think excluding people from your format makes a successful format. I think finding a way to hit a middle ground, which is my objective here, is where there is ways to make your decks in this competitive. And competitive-minded players will very quickly find a way to make Blue Eyes or Dark Magician, or, as I mentioned, Branded, into a competitive format. Trick Stars or Sky Strikers have really high potential, even in a singleton format, of being very, very dangerous because of what their cards do. But it also allows people to run Gem Knights and Cyber Dragons and things of that nature, Elemental Heroes, and have fun playing. They should be able to win a game somewhat regularly. Now, being a singleton format, the odds of having a quote-quote brick hand escalates dramatically. And also, there's a chance that someone just draws the right combo of cards and they cycle off and they just go off like a regular meta deck would. That's part of the fun. If you play any other card game, and while people can compare this to Commander, so I'm going to make the comparison myself right now. In Commander, you have people who have combo pieces. When their combo goes off, if you don't have an answer, they win. Or even if they're not able to win and just ride with that combo, they're able to get a board state that you can't handle. And that's part of the game. That's part of the fun. Sometimes things spiral out of your control. But there's a chance in Commander that you had to counterspell, or maybe you have a board wipe, or because it's a multiplayer format, maybe your opponent has the board wipe. Maybe your opponent's able to counter what your other opponent did. And this right here is still a one-on-one format, so it is up to you. But, your opponent might have a really, really powerful creature, but a Vindictivo Mage stops it and kills it. So, and this is the idea. It's basically to bring back more thought-provoking in your deck constructing and a lot more, emphasis on an archetype. One of the ones that was kind of the inspiration for this is Black Wings. You bring those up, or Raid Raptors. Both of those cards archetypes have tremendous amounts of support. They're kind of like Blue Eyes White Dragon and Dark Magician. They have a lot of support because Konami has tried to keep those being relevant. Same with Elemental Heroes, because they were very popular in certain eras. Red Dragon Archfiend, which I've used as multiple examples of. The ability to have your support cards that are specific to your archetype mean something again, because traps will probably be more relevant in this game. It's going to mean a lot as far as fun gameplay. Anyway, check this out. Play test it with your friends. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Have I completely lost my mind? Or have I stumbled upon something that could be the equivalent of Commander, real Commander, for Yu-Gi-Oh, where it is an Eternal format, and we're using the newest sets, and you don't need 3 copies of $80 to $100 cards. You need just one, because that's all you can use. Could this be the thing that brings Yu-Gi-Oh back to the forefront of being the #1 game out there, or at least a strong number 2 or 3? Because right now, I mean, we're as Yu-Gi-Oh fans, we're losing to not only Magic and Pokemon, which consistently we've had a hard time beating both of those, but we're losing to One Piece, Gundam, Power World's fixing to come out. You know, for a short time, Star Wars Unlimited was beating us. Lorcana was killing us for a while. It's time Yu-Gi-Oh, one of the oldest games, one of the most consistent games, one of the most popular games, took back its rightful spot on the podium of at least of the top 3 games. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you later. Get your game on.